In a world where 99% of people are desperately trying to fit in, the 1% understand that success is found when you stand out from the crowd. I'm Jack Henderson, and this is the Flamingo Sundays podcast. If you're looking for the 99%, you're in the wrong place. This week on Flamingo Sundays, Robert Croak. Robert's journey started out with his lower class upbringing in the eastern side of Toledo, Ohio. His childhood was turbulent, growing up in a broken home with divorced parents. But regardless of the setbacks, Robert never lost focus of his dreams. At the young age of 22 years old, Robert made his first full-time jump into owning his own business, which would be the first of many. He then went on to run the family restaurant and bar Frankie's, which was made famous by his grandfather. And throughout the years, he continued to open more bars and restaurants, and that passion for business only grew. But things really started to take off for Robert in the early 2000s when he launched the business CustomSiliconBracelets.com. And from that business, the Sillybandz business grew. And at its peak in the mid-2000s, that business was doing over $200 million a year in revenue. And that's in US dollars. And from there, Robert's personal brand and business brand continued to grow, now amassing millions of followers over his social media channels and being an advisor and an investor to many other businesses across the US. Robert Croak. Steve Jobs famously said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking." What comes to mind when you hear that quote?
What comes to mind when I hear that quote, and a good quote, I love that one, is the fact that in social media, in the lives that we lead now in 2023, everyone's living a comparison-based lifestyle. And I think it's really suicide for authenticity, because people are in just such this weird kind of vacuum of information and seeing what everyone else is living, but what they're seeing is the highlights. So they're not really seeing the real lives of those perpetrated, on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So I think that quote just really resonates well, that people need to stay authentic to themselves and not what they think society thinks they are. And that's just very important, and why I feel I've done well is because I do everything raw and what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, and I don't care about what others think.
And why do you think that is?
Because everyone wants an escape from their lives, and they think that the rest of the world is living a better life than them. And whether it's true or not, they're not getting the real behind the scenes view of what really happens. Everyone's got this polished persona that they present to the general public, but it's not really what their lives are like. And so I think people just really struggle with wishing they could be somewhere they're not, rather than creating the life that resonates best for them.
Very, very true. And if you were to rewind back to teenage Robert Croak, do you think he would have answered the question a little differently?
No, I think I would have done the same. I actually just did a TikTok on this the other day, and because everyone asked me what would I do different if I did it all over again, and my answer is always I would have moved to a warmer, affluent climate immediately, and then that way I could be among peers that and more opportunities, because proximity to power sometimes can lead you to possess it. And so I would have moved and gotten away, because, I grew up in a poor neighborhood, in Ohio, bad weather all the time. So it's hard to be, on top of your game when there's a foot of snow. So for me, yeah, I think I would have answered it the same, because I feel I've always led an authentic life. And that doesn't always mean it's great, but it just resonates well with me. And I think that's why the people that follow me and engage with me on all the social media platforms are very sticky to my content, because they feel the authenticity and the truths in what I speak, rather than me having some polished podcast or polished TikToks that are done in a studio. So I think it's important to me that everyone finds their own authenticity and really goes to that direction.
Couldn't agree more. And let's unpack the upbringing of yourself. So you said you grew up in Ohio. It looks a little bit different from the weather that you're standing in now. It's very sunny. Where are you based at the moment?
I am in the beautiful Rancho Santa Fe, California. I spend a lot of time here. So right now I split my time between Rancho Santa Fe, Denver, Colorado, and Ohio, where my operations are. But it's definitely too cold in Denver right now. So I took a last minute flight here for some meetings and some stuff I had to do in Southern California. And it's much better being in 70 degrees and sunny.
I can imagine so, and it looks very Palm Springs with the palm trees in the background.
Let me show you the mountains.
That's cold.
It's very beautiful. Yes, I love it here.
So how different now is the life that you live in comparison to the life that you lived when you were growing up?
Very, very different. The life I grew up was very difficult. And the irony of it is that I get so many people, in my DMs and in my comments that always say, oh, it must be nice to be a wealthy, older guy, whatever, and they just assume that everyone grows up with nepotism and wealth. And I actually grew up in a broken home, two half brothers. My father left when I was 6. My mother left when I was 10. And so I was relegated to kind of neighbors and other people that were willing to help. And with that, became the tenacity to really make it out. And I wanted to be the first millionaire in my family. I wanted to be the first person to graduate with a college degree from my family, and really just be able to do a lot and give back to others because I didn't have anyone to do it for me. So yeah, it's much different now than it was before. And that's why, I spend so much time, giving back and trying to really help other people through my stories, because, so many people live in this fear-based analysis paralysis, especially when it comes to, wealth and growing your finances, that they're just afraid to get started because they don't know who to trust. So I just try to be that helping hand to give people some guidance of how they can get started and the right ways to do it, because there's so many, charlatans out there on the web, selling bullcrap packages to people to try and make money off them.
How did you get started? So obviously, there's a famous saying where someone can grow up in a household where the father's an alcoholic, one of them becomes an alcoholic, and one of them never drinks a day in their life. It doesn't sound like you had the upbringing which would have led to having an easy, financial journey. How did you get started and take action and naturally build the life that you've built?
I really got started, with the entrepreneurial spirit very early on. And from there, it just grew. I started with the paper routes, like I said. And then I took over a restaurant that my grandparents owned when I was 23 years old. And I bought that out of probate. And then I got into real estate. So I've always just been on this journey. I've only ever had one job, and that was when I was 21. I took a job in finance at a car dealership. But other than that, I've always just been an entrepreneur.
And the thing that I found interesting, which I didn't know, is I was listening to a podcast that you were on, and I think that the business that most people, I guess, found out about you for was Sillybandz, but that business was grown off the back of another company that you had, which was doing silicone bands, which maybe wasn't as famous. Can you run us through how that unfolded? Because I think that's a super interesting story.
It really is a great backstory that a lot of people miss and just haven't followed. And that is, I used to do triathlons, and I did a bunch of triathlons at the time when Livestrong Foundation just had formed, and they were giving out the Livestrong bracelets after you completed the race. So many people were asking me about it. So I started a company. We called the Livestrong Foundation, and I called them. And the girl that answered the phone, probably an intern or just a phone girl, really helped me out, told me where to go, gave me the information for the factory. And 3 days later, I launched CustomSiliconeBracelets.com. And the rest is history. We made millions and millions of customized silicone bracelets for companies worldwide like Red Cross and all the various companies, movie companies, and just everyone. And that was just a really great stride for the company. And that really opened the doors in the silicone business for how Sillybandz was transformed.
And were those just the bracelets, which were just the flat silicone bracelets, usually with something like engraved into the silicone?
Yeah, they said Livestrong, Believe, Achieve, Red Cross, what would Jesus do? All of those, and those bracelets still sell. The days they were in 2003, 4, 5, and 6, but that definitely paved the way because I had good factories, I had good processes, and that was what led the way to Sillybandz.
And how did you know what to do to get started? Because prior to that business, you'd taken over a family restaurant or cafe and grown that quite successfully. But they're going into a consumer-based product, which is a little bit different to hospitality. How did you make that transition and naturally know how to do it?
Well, the question is, and the answer is, I didn't know how to do it. But like a true entrepreneur, I jumped in head first and said, hey, there's a need. People love these. What am I going to do with it? And so with the success of custom silicone bracelets, I figured I could replicate that because I knew the manufacturing, I knew the pick and pack and all the logistics. And it was just a matter of finding the next product that I thought could be a big hit. So, most entrepreneurs are going to tell you that they charted it all out and they had a plan and they executed it perfectly. But the real truth is that's usually bullshit. And usually it's just you're trying different things and you have an idea and you go with it and they either work or they don't, because in entrepreneurship, you're going to have more losses than you're going to have wins. So you just got to try things and see what works for you and what resonates well for your skill set.
And just on that, would you say that the idea is the most important part of that equation, or the execution of the idea is the most important of that equation?
Great question. The 100%, it's the execution. Everyone's an idea person. I have 1,000 people a month that tell me they have the next Sillybandz. But the problem is they're the same people that won't even spend 10 minutes to do a cursory research to see if their product has a lot of competitors or if it has even a remote chance of success. So for that question, it's 100% execution.
For the Sillybandz business, when you got it up and running, from my understanding, it wasn't something where you just launched it and the next day you had thousands and thousands of orders. How did the execution evolve from when you did start the business to, when you were doing north of 7 figures in sales a day?
I mean, it really started out, Sillybandz were just one of like 3 or 4 projects I was working on in the consumer product space. And, we sold a couple packs here and there. That was in the heyday of, Facebook was the big platform then. And then we had a regional store that had 3 stores in the region that called and said they wanted to do a minimum order. What does that look like? And we did that and it went really well. They sold out in like 24 hours. And then it just kind of grew exponentially from there, where we went from, 10, 20, 30 stores were carrying Sillybandz to thousands and thousands. And then we got to a point at one point, where we had our own planes with UPS because we were doing so much business. And we went from 15 employees to over 3,000 employees in like about 4 or 5 months. So those crazy times, because I learned so much about scale and made so many mistakes that now moving forward, when I'm building new brands or I'm coming on as an advisor for new brands, everyone else gets the luxury of not having to pay for their mistakes like I did, because you can just learn from my mistakes and I share it all.
And what were some of those mistakes growing from a company with a few employees to 3,000 in a few short years? Reflecting back now, what would you say are some of the biggest learnings?
Hire experts quicker is one. Number 2, trust those experts and don't micromanage. And then number 3, try to open yourself up for outside objective from people that have done it before. Money has a way of making people feel, and success has a way of making people feel like they know it all. And it's just not true. And I thought that I was in good shape because I had already done custom silicone bracelets and, we did a couple $1 million a year. But this was a completely different story because it was a worldwide phenomenon. So I was dealing with everything from trademarks in other countries. Should I have them or should I not? I was dealing with how do I get my shipping costs down because it was so much money every week, and I found ways to do that. So there were just so many learning curves thrown at me in a 1 to 2 year period. And I wouldn't change it for the world because I probably left a lot of money on the table, but I also came out of it on the other side with just this greater appreciation for building a brand. It's a legacy brand because, no one's ever going to forget Sillybandz. And so that's the awesome part, is being able to have that right in your face learning curve that you can't Google. Like, I couldn't have brought in an outside CEO at that time to fix problems that we were having because the growth was so meteoric. But I definitely could have brought in other people to help me that were experts in the field rather than promoting from within of people that I already had.
And the growth, I guess, that you guys had sounds like it happened over 2 to 3 years. Was the vision to see that growth out on a much I guess greater trajectory, or were you of the understanding that the product of Sillybandz may be short-lived and we'll have to go on to the next product inside of that business?
Yeah, when you have something like Sillybandz that becomes this worldwide phenomenon, there are no strategies. They all go out the window. We could spend hours and hours of me telling you stories of things we did that people would look at and think was chaotic, but we were holding on for dear life every single day. I mean, when you go to bed at midnight every night and wake up at 6 a.m. and you're at your desk by 6:30 and you're doing 6:30 to 9:30 every day for 2.5 years, and every day it's just chaos of trying to hold on to the growth and all of the opportunities, planning goes out the window because you're being reactive and you're not being proactive. And anyone that says they've got it all planned out and it goes the way it's planned is just full of shit. And so for me, it was just really all about making the best decisions we could to make sure that we gave the product the best opportunity for success and that we took care of our retailers and distributors as well.
And I think you did a pretty good job reflecting back, huh?
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting now because Sillybandz are getting really popular again. And it's the 20-something sector now that's showing the younger kids about Sillybandz. So it's a really unique time for me as well because the product is coming back so much as we speak.
And would you say that's because of the growth of, I guess, your online profile through the social channels?
No, I think it's just definitely the organic nature of products like that, like Crocs coming back and some of the other products. It's just these products that are super, super popular usually come back. And right now, I think it's just nostalgia and organic is really driving all of it. So it's pretty awesome. We have some of the biggest influencers and celebrities in the world that are promoting Sillybandz organically through their stories or reels, and we're not paying them. And it's just so awesome to see that camaraderie and that excitement for a product that was part of their childhood.
Marketing in 2023, I'm assuming, was a little bit different to what marketing would have been in 2009 to 2012. With your businesses now, how do you look at marketing and do you look at it differently?
They're both kind of similar, but different in a way that I feel back then there were less brands that understood social media marketing and digital strategies. Now more and more people understand it, and larger brands and Fortune 500 companies are all doing it. But the question always remains is, are they doing it well? And right now, TikTok is a prime example. There's a lot of larger brands out there that reach out to me personally and say, hey, we don't really have a TikTok strategy. You guys seem to be crushing it with your brands and your personal brand. How do we do it and what does that look like? So I think, as always, in a category like social media marketing, there's always the growing pains and the understanding of what works. And, so back in 2010, when we were crushing it every day, what really worked for us was Facebook and Google AdWords. And now it's a different strategy because, Google AdWords still work, but obviously TikTok works better, Reels work better, YouTube Shorts work better. So I think it's just having different tools and making sure you have people that understand the breadth of those tools and what can bring the most value and ROI for a company.
And it sounds like transitioning with the times and not being caught up on something that used to work that may not work as well now.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Most brands are run by 50-some-year-old, 40-some-year-old, males that aren't up to it. I mean, I have investor friends that tease me all the time, and they're like, hey, why are you on TikTok so much? Why are you doing this? Isn't that for kids dancing? And I just laugh at them because if they had any idea the ROI per hour for me for doing social media content, they would be mystified because they don't understand it. But I mean, that's the age-old problem in business is usually the wrong people are making the decisions on things that they don't have enough knowledge on. And it really hurts even some of the biggest companies out there.
Often, for a business owner who's growing and scaling a business, one of the things that often gets pushed to the back burner is their personal brand, because they say, I just don't have time to do it and it's not a good use of my time. You just said something there that was interesting, that if your friends only knew the ROI of your time when when you're creating content, they'd be shocked. How do you substantiate, the ROI of a piece of content or the time that you put into creating content, and I guess how do you substantiate it to make it worthwhile?
Well, for me, it's kind of like how I've done business my whole entire career. If I believe in something and I'm excited about it, I just go all in and figure it out on the way down. So for me right now, I just wanted to really go after my personal branding, because you're exactly right. I've spent the last 10 years having my personal branding on hold. And even though my name is out there and I'm well known in the business circles, I'm not as well known, throughout all sectors of society like social media and such. So for me, I always believe that if I bring value, I do good work, that the ROI will come. And for my personal brand, it's never been more prominent than that. It's this last 90 days of my life is a crazy, crazy whirlwind of opportunities and just amazing situations where, I might do a private one-on-one call with somebody and they say it changed their lives. Or I do a live, like last night I went live on TikTok and had over 16,000 people join my live for 45 minutes, which is just mind-blowing from a content and conversion strategy. So for me, it's all about just bringing value, hiring the right people to make sure that I have, the brightest minds that I can helping me. So then that way I can stay authentic to myself. And I always believe that the money will come, because if you chase money, it's just not going to happen. And if you let it come and you do good things, at least in my life, it has always worked out for me.
So with, say, a content strategy for someone who was just getting started now producing content, and they're probably not going to get a great deal of views on their first, 20, 50, 100 videos. What would, I guess, your advice be for those people?
Great. It's a great question. And I use this answer every single day, is you are literally, and I know it's cliche, you're one decision, one meeting, one networking event away from a totally different life. And that's why you have to put yourself out there. I have people all the time that reach out to me and say, oh my God, I've done 30 videos a row, nothing's happening. Or, oh, I went to 3 networking events, nothing's happening. And it's that victim quitter mentality, because you never really know. My goal when I started really going after this, let's call it 100 days ago, my goal was to get to 250,000 followers on TikTok and have some good engagement. Now I'm almost 1 million followers on TikTok in 90 days. And I'm in the top 1 percentile of engagement rates on TikTok, which is just incredible considering the hundreds of millions of accounts there are, that I could be in the top 1%. So if it can happen for me, it can happen for anyone. And so it just really gets down to people just have to go with their gut. And if their gut says they're doing the right thing, then the success will come, and you just have to stick it out.
I want to change it now to when you transitioned from, being a business operator, or mainly a business operator running Sillybandz, to, more of an investor and running multiple enterprises. How did that transition occur after the Sillybandz' huge amount of growth?
Yeah, it happened really organically, because when Sillybandz was happening, obviously my deal flow and the opportunities that were coming my way for angel investing and new opportunities and startups and speaking engagements, all of that stuff just really came my way organically. And I did a bunch of it back then, but then I also, I had to also run my businesses, current and otherwise. So for me, it was really just about getting a handle on it and then not doing too much, because there were times when I was doing too much and I couldn't keep an eye on the brands that I already had. So now I have a lot better structure where I'm very cautious of how many investments I do a quarter, and in what categories, because, a lot of times people like myself, they get all their eggs in one basket like real estate. and then there's a market correction and they lose everything. Or, they spread themselves too thin and they get attached to too many shiny ball syndrome projects and they end up losing all their money. So, my recommendation to people in this kind of stratosphere and atmosphere is to always make sure to write smaller checks than you think you should, invest in people and find the right founders that kind of fit and you vibe with. And, one of my age-old stories that I tell, and it's a great test, if you want to know if you're meant to invest with someone or be in a partner with somebody, take them golfing or take them drinking. Because if you take them drinking and they get a little bit tipsy and they treat the bartenders and servers like shit, well, guess what? They're going to do other things in the future that are bad for your company and bad for your reputation. And likewise with golfing, take someone golfing. If they cheat on the golf course and they don't follow proper etiquette while golfing, they're going to cheat in business and they're going to cheat on their friends and cheat on their wives. Generally, people that don't live a life of authenticity and just being a good person, you can figure those red flags out as simple as one dinner or one round of golf.
It's very good. It's like the rule: if you wouldn't spend 2 hours at an airport with someone, then you probably shouldn't be in business with them.
100%. I had a deal maybe 6 years ago. Guy was coming in to write a check. We were having lunch with him, and he was the only investor besides the three of us, and he was going to invest in a project. He came in and he talked about himself a lot. He was very arrogant. He was very rude to the server, and he was bragging about something to do with a car he just bought and the rims he put on it, which had nothing to do with our meeting, and it felt really disrespectful and time wasting of our time. And so I texted my other founder while we were in the meeting, and I said, this guy is not for me. I'm going to wrap this up and tell him we're not interested. I wrapped up the meeting within like 5 minutes. I said, great to meet you. We'll let you know if we're interested. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm here to write a check. I want in. And I was like, well, we wanted to have this exploratory meeting. We'll let you know. And then we told him no, and we didn't take his money because it would have never worked out in the end.
That's a very, very good story. And something I heard you say on I think it was on a podcast once was one of the learnings that you had during the Sillybandz, I guess, growth when you were investing in a lot of different companies. And I think one of the learnings was, instead of spreading yourself very thin, be more specific with what you're investing in, and just like you said, write smaller checks as opposed to, trying to be in everything.
Yeah, it just gets to be to a situation where, Mark Cuban said it really well. And he said that, in the investor entrepreneurial world, you only have to be right once. And it really is true, because if you're right once and you're smart with your money, then you can live a really fruitful life and really do a lot of cool stuff. And so for me, I used to write too many checks to too many founders. And now I'm just a lot more careful, and it has really proven to be a better strategy for me, because you have to look at it in the entrepreneurial world. If you invest in 10 companies, generally 6 of them are going to fail completely. 1 or 2 of them are going to make a little bit of money, and you hope that one of them really crushes it. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to have, all home runs, and hitting some singles is fine as well.
And what are you seeing as being an interesting sector to invest in 2023?
Depending on your risk tolerance for 2023, I would, if you're very risk adverse and you want to play it safe, I would do high interest savings accounts. I would do I-bonds, maybe some CDs. You could look at some index funds that are in good places that are investing into AI. ROBO is good, IRBO is good. So index funds that are in the AI space, in the metaverse, and also cryptocurrency. I think, a lot of people are against cryptocurrency now because they didn't make money with it, or they lost money in the end. And, blockchain is here to stay, crypto is here to stay, and there's still a lot of growth and a lot of money to be made there. And I think there's still some opportunities in real estate right now. Definitely, I think Airbnb is overcrowded. A lot of people are going to get hurt. A lot of, HOAs and different ordinances are changing for Airbnb. So I think people should be a little more careful there. But I think there's still good opportunities in the market every day to make money. And, you just got to go, you got to go where people are going to be going and get ahead of the money, because if you're hearing it on Instagram or TikTok, it's probably too late.
But if you're listening to this podcast, and it's just the right time, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's really, the whole goal of my content is to make it seem more bite-sized and easy for people to get started, because so much of society deals with analysis paralysis when it comes to investing. And so it's really just all about getting out there and getting ahead of the curve, because, there's so many opportunities for investing, big and small. You just have to be willing to do the research and take some risk. That's why I try to tell everyone that's getting started, get a $50,000 or $100,000 base first. Once you have that in some index funds through a Roth IRA, so you're safe and you have that untouchable money that's making money and compounding for you, then go out and start taking some more diversified risks.
So it sounds like build a strong foundation, and then with a smaller portion of your net wealth, you can start taking some higher risk investments.
Well, yeah, people every day say, well, I just want to go YOLO all my money, all 10 grand that I have saved up on one stock or one crypto. And that's just financial suicide. I would never do that.
Very, very good advice. And obviously my business is in Australia is in the real estate business. So I'm curious to understand, how your real estate investing has gone in the US, and, how you would compare that to other investing that you've done alongside of real estate.
I've always done well in real estate, but I don't take as high a risk as some of the other people that I know that might have bigger portfolios than me. And I'm in and out of it depending on, because it's only a small portion of my portfolio. Right now, the main focus for me and my team and the people I'm associated with is we are doing mostly flips, because we don't really want to be in a long-term rental. And we think the flip business is really strong right now. So we're into mostly moderately priced under 300K homes that we can flip and bring value for a new homeowner. Flips, and we think that's a good place to be. And we've got some really good markets we're working in, so we're excited about that. And there's some interesting plays in the foreclosure game, and also in the tax lien sales as well.
And have you started to see interest rates in America really take a toll on the macro market or the macro real estate market?
They're definitely taking a toll, but people also have to understand the math. If you were going to buy a house, 2 years ago for 3% interest, and it was 150K more than it is now because it was 100K over asking and you couldn't even get a home, but now you can buy it for 150K less at 7% interest, you're still in better shape now to buy the car now and then just refinance when rates correct.
Very good advice. To wrap up all of our podcasts, Robert, what we like to do is get the guests to let us know a quote that they live by or the quote that they resonate with. And then we open up the next episode with that quote. So for yourself, I know you're a man of many quotes. What's a quote that's popping to mind now that you think will resonate?
My quote that I live by every single day, and I've lived by for 30 years, is you have to be in it to win it. And what that means to me is so many people are talkers and they're not doers, and you have to be a doer. Like we discussed earlier in this podcast, execution is everything in the entrepreneurial world. And so for me, you have to be in it to win it is one of my favorite quotes to live by, because of the fact that people talk instead of do. And if I can get people to execute and move forward and get in the game, then I've done my job.
Love it, mate. Very appreciative of your time. We'll chop this up and make it sound $1 million. Enjoy the rest of your trip. And
thank you so much. And if you need anything else, just hit me back up and I can be at a desk and have better service. I hope this still works okay. And you can get some decent clips with me walking around parking lots and everywhere else.
Mate, it's very you. It's going to look exactly like your content.
Accidentally, I didn't realize I was going to be so overlapped. But thank you. I do have to run, and I'll talk to you soon.
This is general advice and does not take into consideration your objectives, situation, or needs. You should consider if this advice is suitable to you or your circumstances, and please read any applicable PDFs beforehand. This is a Henderson podcast production.